I didn't lock the bathroom door. That was the first mistake. Or maybe it was the first truth. The shower had just gone quiet, the kind of quiet that still hums with heat. Steam clung to the mirror like it didn't want to let go, blurring my reflection into something softer, less accountable. I wrapped the towel around myself too loosely, like I wasn't really trying, like some part of me wanted the risk. This is our home, I told myself. The words sounded responsible. Married. Safe. Ordinary. The floor was still dry. No one had used this bathroom yet today. That detail mattered to me in a way I didn't understand at the time. It felt untouched. Like the day hadn't started yet. Like there was still space to decide who I was going to be. I was reaching for the lotion when I felt the air change. Not a sound. Just a shift. A presence. The door opened without a knock. I turned, heart slamming so hard it felt loud. And there he was, standing just inside the frame like he belonged there. Like the unlocked door had invited him. His eyes flicked to the towel, then back to my face, too quickly to be polite, too slowly to pretend it meant nothing. I thought it was empty, he said. But he didn't leave. The steam wrapped around us both, thick and intimate, and suddenly the bathroom felt smaller than it ever had. My skin was still wet, cooling now, hypersensitive to the air, to the way his gaze seemed to touch me before he ever did. I should have said something sharp. I should have pulled the towel tighter. I should have reminded myself this is our home. Instead, I stood there breathing too fast, watching his throat move when he swallowed. My wedding ring felt heavier than usual, like it was trying to anchor me to the floor. Somewhere down the hall, my husband's phone buzzed with a notification I didn't check. No one moved. Not away. Not closer. And in that suspended moment, with steam curling between us and the door still wide open, I felt it. The quiet, terrifying realization that something had already begun. I wish I could say that moment came out of nowhere. That it was just bad timing and steam and an unlocked door. But the truth had been building quietly for months. He had been around more lately. Not in an obvious way, nothing that would raise alarms. Just present. Fixing something in the kitchen while my husband worked late. Asking if I needed help carrying groceries. Standing a little too close in hallways that suddenly felt narrower than they should have. My husband hadn't noticed. Or maybe he had and didn't think it mattered. At home, everything had become predictable. Mornings passed without eye contact. Evenings were schedules and half listening and falling asleep turned away from each other. His touch still existed, technically, but it landed flat like a habit that had lost its meaning. I told myself this was normal. Long marriages settle. Passion fades. You're supposed to be grateful for stability. But then there was this, the way my chest tightened now, the way my pulse refused to calm just because he was standing there, respectful on the surface, dangerous underneath. I can come back, he said finally, one hand still on the doorframe. He didn't move it. The towel felt thinner by the second. I could feel dampness at my collarbone, the slow cooling of my skin, every nerve suddenly awake. I became painfully aware of how exposed I was. Not naked, but close enough to feel seen in a way I hadn't been in years. It's fine, I heard myself say. Fine. Such a small word to cover something this big. He nodded, eyes dropping again, and that should have been the end of it. But instead he stepped in just a fraction more. The door clicking softly behind him as it drifted closer to the frame. This is your bathroom, he said almost carefully. Our home echoed in my head. The phrase felt less like a boundary now and more like a question. I leaned back against the counter, needing the support, needing something solid. The mirror behind me was still fogged, hiding my expression even from myself. I could smell the soap on my skin. I could feel his awareness of it. And somewhere deep down, beneath the guilt and the logic and the vows I still wore on my hand, I realized I wasn't afraid of being caught. I was afraid of being asked to step away, and knowing I might not. The silence stretched, thick as the steam still clinging to the ceiling. He didn't touch me. That was the cruelest part. He just stood there, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, close enough that my body leaned forward before I realized I was doing it. The towel shifted slightly, a reminder of how little stood between intention and consequence. I didn't mean to make this awkward, he said quietly, but his voice did something to me. Low, careful. Like he was holding himself back on purpose. It's not, I replied too quickly. Another lie. Or maybe a wish. My skin prickled as the air cooled it, every inch of me aware of the marble counter cold against my thighs, of the faint drip from the showerhead behind the curtain, of the way his eyes kept returning to mine, as if looking anywhere else would give too much away. I crossed my arms without thinking, the towel bunching under my fingers. The movement pulled his attention again, and this time he didn't look away fast enough. Something passed between us then. Not words. Not permission. Recognition. He took one step closer. Just one. "You should lock the door," he murmured, not moving to leave. I let out a breath I hadn't known I was holding. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it might shake the towel loose all on its own. "I know," I said. I didn't move either. The space between us disappeared without either of us deciding to cross it. Suddenly he was there, close enough that I could see the tiny crease between his brows, close enough that his breath warmed my cheek when he spoke. "This is your home," he said again, softer now. The words landed differently this time, less like a warning, more like an invitation wrapped in guilt. My wedding ring pressed cold against my skin as my hand tightened on the counter. I thought of my husband's predictable touch, his familiar weight beside me at night. I thought of how invisible I had felt lately, how quiet my needs had become. And then his fingers brushed the edge of the towel. Barely there. An accident, maybe. Or the most deliberate mistake of my life. My body reacted instantly, a sharp inhale, a tremor I couldn't hide. His hand stilled, hovering, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. The bathroom felt impossibly small now, full of breath and heat and things we weren't saying. I knew this was the moment, the one I would replay later, the one where I could still choose differently. But standing there, damp and exposed and finally seen, all I could think was how long it had been since anyone had looked at me like this. And how badly I wanted him to keep looking. Time slowed in a way that felt almost unreal. Like the bathroom had slipped out of the rest of the house and into its own pocket of silence. His fingers were still there. Hovering, uncertain. Respectful in a way that made everything worse. If he had grabbed me, I could have recoiled. I could have blamed instinct. But this was choice pressing gently against my skin. "You're still wet," he said quietly, not as an observation, but as if the words surprised him. I nodded, though I wasn't sure why. My throat felt tight, every swallow loud in my ears. The towel clung to me now, heavy and warm, holding the shape of me in a way that felt far too intimate. "I should go," he murmured. He didn't move. Instead, his hand finally settled. Just the lightest pressure through the fabric at my side. Not claiming. Not pulling. Just there. The contact sent a shiver through me so sharp it felt like my knees might give. My body betrayed me before my mind could catch up. I leaned into his touch, barely, but enough. Enough for him to feel it. Enough for the air between us to change. His breath hitched. I felt it before I heard it. The guilt arrived then, sudden and heavy. My husband's face flickered through my mind, the way he kissed my forehead without really looking at me. The way we talked about groceries and bills instead of us. The way I still loved him even now. "This isn't," I started, but the words fell apart. "This is dangerous," he finished for me. His thumb moved slightly, tracing the edge of the towel, never slipping beneath it. The restraint in that gesture unraveled me more than anything else could have. Felt like he was asking without asking. Waiting without pushing. The bathroom was completely still. No footsteps in the hall. No voices. Just the quiet drip of water and the sound of our breathing, too loud, too close. I closed my eyes. In the dark behind my lids, I saw the line I was standing on. How easy it would be to step back. How impossible it felt to step away. When I opened them again, he was watching me like I was something fragile. Something he already knew he might break. I reached up before I could stop myself, my hand brushing his wrist. Skin warm, solid, real. That touch was the answer. And the moment my fingers closed around him, I knew there would be no going back to who I had been when I stepped into that shower. My fingers tightened around his wrist like I was afraid he might disappear if I let go. The contact was simple. Innocent, almost. But it sent a jolt through me that made my breath stutter. His skin was warm, grounding, and suddenly I was painfully aware of how long it had been since I'd felt anything unfamiliar like this. Since my body had reacted before my thoughts could intervene. He didn't pull away. Instead, he slowly turned his hand, careful, deliberate, until his palm rested against my hip through the towel. The fabric was the only thing between us, and somehow that made it worse. The restraint. The unspoken agreement that we were already crossing a line, even without crossing that one. "You should stop me," he said quietly. His voice wasn't pleading. It wasn't commanding. It sounded almost like permission for me to choose who I was about to become. I shook my head before I even realized it. The movement felt heavy, final. "This is our home," I whispered again, but the words no longer felt like a rule. They felt like a confession. He stepped closer, closing the last inch of space between us. I could feel the heat of his body now, feel the way my skin reacted instinctively, leaning toward him like it remembered something my mind had forgotten. His hand slid just slightly, still over the towel, following the curve of my waist. The sensation made my stomach flutter with something dangerously close to relief. Like my body was grateful to be noticed. Like it had been waiting. I thought of my husband then, not in guilt but in contrast. His predictable touch. His certainty. The way he no longer looked at me like I was a question worth answering. This man did. He lifted his other hand, hesitating near my shoulder, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. I stood there, trembling, my pulse loud in my ears, my wedding ring cool against my damp skin. His fingers brushed my shoulder, slow and reverent, sending a shiver straight through me. I closed my eyes, not to shut him out, but because opening them felt too honest. "This changes things," he murmured. I nodded, my forehead nearly touching his chest now, breathing him in, feeling the truth of that settle into my bones. "Yes," I said softly. And in that moment, wrapped in a towel, standing on a cold bathroom floor, heart racing with equal parts fear and longing, I realized I wasn't just risking my marriage. I was risking the version of myself that still believed she would never do this. I should have stepped back after that. After admitting it out loud. After feeling the weight of what I was about to lose settle into my chest. Instead I stayed. His forehead rested lightly against mine. Not pressing, just touching enough to make my thoughts scatter. Our breaths tangled, uneven and shallow, filling the small space between us with something that felt dangerously close to intimacy. "This isn't who I am," I whispered, though I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince. He didn't argue. He didn't reassure me. He just stayed there, letting the silence answer for him. His hand remained at my waist, steady now, like he had already decided not to be afraid. The towel was still between us, still technically protecting me, but my body didn't feel protected at all. It felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with skin. I thought of the rituals I already knew would follow if this went any further. The locked phone. The deleted messages that would never be written. The careful lies about timing, about errands, about why my heart would suddenly race for no obvious reason. That should have stopped me. Instead, the thought sent a strange thrill through me, sharp, frightening, alive. His thumb moved again, slow and grounding, tracing a small arc at my side through the fabric. My breath caught, and this time I didn't try to hide it. I let him hear it. Let him know what he was doing to me. He lifted my chin gently, giving me one last chance to pull away. His eyes searched mine, not hungry, not reckless, intent. "If we do this," he said softly, "you can't pretend it didn't happen." I swallowed, my pulse hammering so hard it felt like it might give me away to the whole house. "I know." The bathroom felt impossibly quiet now, like the rest of the world had stepped back to watch. I could almost hear my husband moving somewhere down the hall in my memory, his footsteps familiar, safe, distant. I didn't look toward the door. I leaned in instead, closing the space between us until my lips hovered just short of his cheek, my body trembling with the effort of stopping there. That hesitation, so small, so deliberate, felt heavier than any touch. And in that suspended moment, I understood something terrifying and clear. I wasn't falling. I was choosing. The space between us collapsed quietly. Not in a rush. Not in desperation. It happened the way secrets always do, slowly, then all at once. My lips brushed his cheek first, barely there. A test I could still pretend didn't count. His breath hitched anyway, sharp and unmistakable, and that sounded something to me. It told me I wasn't alone in this weakness. That he felt it too. I shouldn't have noticed how steady his hands were. I shouldn't have noticed how carefully he kept the towel in place, like he understood the thin line I was still clinging to. But I noticed everything. His forehead rested against mine again, this time longer. His nose grazed my temple. The intimacy of it made my chest ache. "This is crossing it," I whispered. "Yes," he said. He didn't say sorry. His hand slid up my back, slow grounding, stopping just below my shoulder blades. The warmth of his palm seeped into me, and my body responded with a shiver I didn't try to hide. I felt myself soften toward him, felt the way my defenses fell away without a fight. Somewhere in the house, a floorboard creaked. My heart jumped violently, fear slicing through the haze. For a split second, reality rushed back in: my husband, the walls, the life I was standing inside while quietly dismantling it. I pulled back just enough to look at him. His eyes were dark, searching my face, waiting. Not demanding. Not pulling me back in. Waiting to see if I would run. That choice again sat heavy in my chest. I thought of the bathroom as it had been moments earlier. Dry floor. Unused. Clean. Innocent in its own way. I thought of how once something is touched, it can never be untouched again. I stepped closer. My hand slid up his chest, feeling his breath deepen under my palms. The contact was electric, intimate in a way that felt far more dangerous than anything physical. I rested my head against his shoulder, hiding my face, hiding from the mirror that might have shown me who I was becoming. His arms came around me then, not tight, not possessive, just enough to hold me there. The towel slipped a fraction, unnoticed, uncorrected, and wrapped in that quiet embrace, standing in a bathroom that would never feel neutral again. I knew this wasn't about desire anymore. It was about surrender. We stayed like that longer than made sense. No rush, no scrambling hands, just the quiet weight of what we had done, and what we were still doing by not stepping away. His arms around me felt steady, almost protective, and that realization scared me more than anything else. I wasn't supposed to feel safe here. I was supposed to feel reckless, ashamed, out of control. But instead, my body softened against him like it had been waiting for permission to rest. "This can't happen again," I said, the words barely louder than the drip of water behind the curtain. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm in a way that felt dangerous. "Maybe," he said. That was enough to undo me. I pulled back then, finally creating space where there hadn't been any. The air felt colder immediately. Reality rushed in: walls, doors, a hallway that led back to the life I was supposed to be living. I adjusted the towel with shaking hands. He stepped back too, giving me room, watching me like he was memorizing the version of me that still existed in that moment. We didn't kiss goodbye. We didn't promise anything. He opened the door and left the way he'd come in, quietly, without looking back. I stood there alone, heart racing, bathroom fog slowly clearing until my reflection came back into focus. I barely recognized her. She looked older somehow, awake in a way she hadn't been before. Later, when my husband asked why the bathroom smelled like soap in the middle of the day, I said I just needed a shower to think. That wasn't a lie. But I didn't tell him what I'd realized standing there. Damp skin cooling, loyalty already eroding. Some doors don't need to be locked to change everything.